I'm sitting in my home office, trying to get through a pile of client invoices. The doorbell rings, and I think about calling Angela my wife, but my fingers are glued to the mouse, scrolling through spreadsheets. Those precious lines of code just seemed so much more important at that moment. My hesitation was a mistake, opening the door to a truth I could never have imagined. "Hey girl, Jerry's not home, is he?" It was Emma, Angela's best friend and next-door neighbor. She must have seen Angela come home and swung by for a visit. "Nope. His car isn't in the driveway or the garage. He said he had some work to do today." "What's up?" Angela replied, walking into the kitchen, the fridge door swinging open. Now, I knew Angela was driving her car to work, but she had a breakdown and called roadside assistance. I was at the office, but since I lived closer, they took me home in the company car. "Awesome, are you up for some fun tonight?" Emma asked, her voice practically vibrating with excitement. "I want to get your pussy filled." That's when my heart stopped. That crude comment was like a punch to the gut, shattering any illusions I had about my perfect little life. I grabbed my phone, fingers shaking as I hit record. Angela giggled. "I'd love to, but it's such short notice. I'm not sure I can get away. Jerry mentioned something about us going out to dinner. I think I'll just relax and have a drink or two. Want to join me?" My tiny home office felt like it was shrinking around me. I cowered, switching off the lights, shutting down my computer, and closing the door quietly. I could hear glasses clinking, the laughter of two women, their hushed conversations, and every sound felt like a knife twisting in my chest. "Oh my God, help a girl out. Tammy was supposed to be my dance partner tonight, but her mom called. Her stomach is upset, so Tammy has to go over and help out," Emma said. We had a double date set up with Eric and Rich. Tammy, the third member of their trio, was known for being wild and free. The three of them had been tight since college, and I always had my suspicions about their relationship, beyond just being friends. I met Angela in college, we fell in love, and started our lives together after graduation. I knew Emma and Tammy well. They were free-spirited and adventurous, always up for a good time. I always trusted Angela because she was more reserved and quiet than her friends. But now, their words were slowly strangling that trust. Emma was on her third marriage, the previous two ending because of her infidelity. Her second husband caught her cheating with a coworker, and it was grounds for divorce. Like Angela, Emma always felt she had a right to freedom while expecting fidelity from the men in her life. I used to love Bob, Emma's current husband, a kind and hardworking man, who was my coworker. I introduced Bob and Emma, never imagining that I was setting Emma up with such a decent man. Tammy, the third member of the trio, had never been married. She craved freedom and living life to the fullest. She often joked that variety was the spice of life. "You bitch. You know how badly I wanted to go out with you and get rough. But I'm freaking in love with Jerry," Angela declared. "I don't want to screw up what I have with him." "Oh, so because you love him, it doesn't mean you don't deserve a good time," Emma countered. "These guys are just for stress relief. They're definitely not keepers, just toys." I took a deep breath, trying to contain the fury that was building within me. I listened as Angela talked about her escapades, about getting her pussy filled, the men she slept with, the names Eric and Rich. "I understand that Bob's out of town," Angela asked. Emma confirmed that he was gone until tomorrow, so she wanted to go do a little something tonight. "Meaning Dio a lot," Angela giggled. "Both those guys are hard as rocks. I bet they take Viagra every date. No man I know can keep it up after they come like they do. And they can pound you without coming. You know, that jerk Eric stuffed it up my butt the last time we had sex. Damn, just talking about it is getting me wet." Angela giggled. "I'm going to have to push you down on the floor and ride your face." "If you'll agree to go," Emma said. "I want to get laid tonight. I need to get stretched, and those guys will do it." I listened to their vulgar conversations, my blood running cold. Angela, the wife I loved, the woman I trusted, had betrayed me so brutally, so callously. "My problem is getting away," Angela said. "Usually I just go with you and Tammy when Jerry goes to the fishing camp. He thinks I don't like sitting around there in the swamps. I sometimes like it. I just like getting stretched out more by a stud, and I might have to ditch these guys before it's too late. We are talking about having kids. None of these guys look enough like Bob to risk getting knocked up by them, and they refuse to wear condoms." I heard every word, every sentence. Angela's words felt like daggers piercing my heart, killing my trust. Emma came up with a perfect plan for Angela to get away, a plan steeped in deceit, a plan to cover up Angela's betrayal. Okay, here's the deal. You tell Jerry that Tammy just broke up with her latest boyfriend, which she did. She's feeling really bad about it, so we need to go and comfort her. Maybe drink some wine and have a girls' night out. That'll give you an excuse to be out really late, or even not come home until morning. We'll take my car and say we were too drunk to drive home. Tammy will back us up. I'll pick up a hot, short skirt and my fuck me high heels and go to your place before Jerry gets home. Then I'll leave here in my regular clothes and change over at your house. Jerry is sitting here, none the wiser with his dick in his hand. You know it. Just to really excite him, you'll be here. You'll thank him for being so thoughtful to our friend and give him a tight hug. You'll rub your tits on his chest and maybe lick his tongue. I heard every word, every gesture, from Angela and Emma. I felt frozen, my mind filled with shock and rage. Leave my husband alone, you slut. Angela laughed. Now you have to be a happy wife, remember? Plus, I don't want to share Jerry. Emma giggled. I'll share all 3 of my holes with other men. But I don't want to share my man, huh? Nope was the reply. I don't want to share Bob either. I'm enough woman to give him everything he needs plus some leftover for my boys. So let's get our clothes and stuff and move to my house before Jerry gets home. Otherwise we're going to be busted. Or rather we are not going to be busted. I sat in the darkness, my mind consumed by anger and hurt. Angela, the wife I loved, had betrayed me, deceived me for so long. I waited until I heard the women's footsteps coming from the bedroom. Let me peek out to make sure Jerry didn't pull in. Emma said. Okay, coast is clear. Let's get out here. I heard the front door open and close. I slipped out the back door and circled the house. I watched Angela and Emma turn right towards her house, 2 houses down. As soon as they were out of sight, I made a quick left. Before I reached the next row of houses, I called my brother. My gut was churning with rage. Yes, I loved Angela wholeheartedly until about half an hour ago. We even talked about getting married. What I heard made me sick, made me furious. I started imagining scenarios, from following her and shooting the bastard she was sleeping with to using one of those expandable batons and breaking a few bones. Both scenarios landed me in jail. I pulled out my phone and called my brother. Oh man. Jason declared as I explained the situation. I didn't know they were doing that stuff. Tammy is a hot piece of ass. You know, I slept with her a few times before I met Sue. Tammy is a hot piece of ass, but not marriage material. I was wondering who she could be sleeping with. Emma is a wild card too. I thought she might be a wild ass, but not for any relationship. So, what are you going to do? Jason knew those girls almost as well as I did. I felt myself falling into the abyss of anger and helplessness. Rage burned like a fire in my heart, incinerating any thoughts of loyalty, of the trust I had placed in Angela. I told him to come pick me up. When he arrived to get me after 20 minutes, the car dealership called to tell me my car was ready. I told him to drive me there. Let's head to the grill and have a beer. I've got a couple of guys waiting for us there. Jason said as I walked out after paying the bill. I wasn't in the mood for booze, but Jason said I should try and get there. I'm worried about you. I followed him. I knew the 2 guys waiting for us. They were friends of my brother and mine. They would back me up. One had gone through a divorce a couple of years ago. He told me how bad it was, but then laughed and repeated the old joke about why divorce is so expensive. They're worth it. I told the 3 of them that I didn't really have much to lose in a divorce. We had bought a house just 3 years ago, so there was no real equity to speak of. I had focused on paying off my student loans as quickly as possible, so we only had a few thousand in savings and checking combined. Angela made almost as much selling medical supplies as I did as a consultant. Child support wasn't going to be an issue, and neither were the kids. I wanted revenge. To burn the earth. I wanted to identify the bastards and inflict as much damage as I could. I didn't know who they were. After stating my goals, the 3 men began to grin. We can do this, Don said. We'll go to the bar or wherever they're going to be. I'll keep an eye on those bastards and get their license plates. You know my brother's a cop. I can find out who they are. Do you happen to have the Find My Phone app on her cell? Ed asked. I nodded. Angela always left her phone somewhere. Usually all I had to do was call it and listen for it ringing. But sometimes it was in her car. For someone who needed it so much for work, Angela was very careless. I briefly considered waiting and seeing if I could get information from her phone, but I had a hunch that these liaisons were scheduled by Tammy and Emma. Angela went along as another volunteer asshole. Damn man. Don chuckled at my remark. You ain't giving your wife any slack. My soon-to-be ex-wife, the bitch. I corrected him. Jason and Ed called their wives to say they had to help a friend out tonight and would explain later. Don was still single. He was still too shy to have a steady girlfriend. How big are these guys if we have to do this? Ed asked. Just want to know if I need to bring my expandable baton. I told him I had one, and would bring it but wasn't going to stand around long enough to get into trouble. I'd let them know they were busted, take some photos, and leave Dodge. If Don could follow them and get their license plates, we were good. Yeah, a fight might ruin the mood for tonight, and a shooting would be even worse. I knew Ed shared the same philosophy as Jason, Don, and me. Don't start trouble and get away if you can. But before you let yourself get beat, give the bastard a taste. Hey man, do you mind if I get Angela after you do? Ed asked, grinning mischievously. You don't have to wait. I'm done with her. But you might have to suffer a few seconds after her boyfriend tonight. I responded, grinning back. Only thing is, no matter how good she is, I'm not sure she's worthy of being the last person you bang. You know Melody would cut off your dick the minute she found out. Don and Jason chuckled. The humor made me feel a bit better. Leaving the three of them to prepare for tonight, I headed home. My phone rang before I reached my house. It was Angela. Hi, sweetie. She started, cheerful as can be. Listen, I know we were talking about going out to dinner tonight, but something came up. Oh yeah, bitch, something just like your boyfriend's dick. Tammy is bummed out. Seems like she just broke up with her latest boyfriend, and she needs to talk. Angela started. I asked her if he caught her sleeping with another dude. She stammered, surprised. I don't know why. She just really sad. She thought this guy might be the one. I laughed as I heard that. I couldn't help it. Oh really, she's sad. Emma and I are going over to her place to sit with her. Maybe have a bottle or 3 of wine, whatever it takes. We just want her to know we care. You don't have a problem with that, do you? I wouldn't have a problem with anyone taking care of a friend in need, I said. Solid friendships are hard to find. You know, someone you trust and know will always have your back and watch out for you. Angela seemed to pause, or was that just my imagination? Thanks, babe. I'll be out in a few minutes. I told her I'd be home in a few minutes too. She was still there when I got back. Not bringing a bag in case you stay? I asked, seeing she only had a purse. Like you and Emma are going to drink too much to drive safely. She stammered something about having a toothbrush in her purse. Yeah, I guess with just 3 ladies, you can sleep in the nude. I chuckled. She had a great tan. She walked out the door. I rushed to my room to take off my suit jacket and change into jeans and a casual shirt suitable for the bar. I wanted a shirt I could wear untucked, because I had a Glock tucked into my waistband on my right side. I shoved my baton into my right back pocket and my wallet into my left. I hoped I wouldn't have to use any of my arsenal, but I'd rather get someone else hurt than me if I had to. Getting busted was inevitable though. I called my brother Jason. He'd rushed home as soon as we left the bar. He swapped cars with Don so he wouldn't be recognized. I walked out the front door and started my walk towards the left again. Jason picked me up. We stopped a few houses down and sat across the street where we could keep Emma's house in sight. We hoped they hadn't left yet, but to be honest, we figured the ladies would take a while to get ready. After an hour of sitting around, we were both getting bored and anxious. According to the phone tracker, she was still at Sandy's, but I wondered if she might have left it there. I decided to call Angela. Hey, I said when she answered. How's Tammy? She stammered. I didn't let her get away with it. Put her on the phone and let me talk to her. I'll give her some words of encouragement. Maybe I can introduce her to one of the guys in the office. Works for Emma. She and Bob seem pretty happy. We're not there yet, Angela replied. Emma and I are still at her house. I asked why it took so long for them to leave. Emma had to make a few calls, and we wanted to talk a bit before we went to Tammy's. Angela replied smoothly. We'll be leaving soon. Are you still at the house or have you gone out to eat? Sorry, I don't have time to cook something for you. Nah. Jason came to get me. We're gonna grab some food and probably have a drink or two because I'll be late getting home if I do tonight. She seemed relieved and told us to drive safe. I guessed Angela was worried I might go straight to Emma's and see what was going on. It would be tough to explain why they were so dressed up, so made up, and smelling so strongly of perfume, just to hang out. Imagine me standing at the door before they even got changed. I knew it would all come out. I hung up the phone. Jason looked at me with a smirk. "Having fun with your little setup?" he asked, trying to hide his excitement under a facade of calm. Then he got serious. "It's a shame things came to this, of course." I nodded. "At least I know the truth now. I can decide to cut my losses and move on." Jason looked at me, surprised. "So you don't want to make a scene, even though it could be the end?" I shook my head, reassuring him that what I heard was enough for me. About 20 minutes later, Emma's garage door opened, and her car pulled out onto the street. We followed discreetly from behind. They never looked back, oblivious to our presence. I bet they were laughing and talking about their fun night, the engine purring like a driving beat. I bet they didn't waste any time drinking either. Their goal was too clear: have a full night of fun, no tricks or foreplay needed. I called Don and Ed. They were in position. Emma pulled up to a quiet bar that we all knew. It was the kind of place people went to make connections, a bar where you could chat and drink. If you weren't interested, you'd either leave early or patiently wait for another opportunity. Jason sighed and chuckled as they got out of the car. "God, Angela and Emma are looking ridiculously hot," he mumbled. We could see them pulling their skirts down, trying to keep just enough of their curves showing. None of us thought they had bras on under those outfits. I smirked. Probably not wearing panties either, unless it's some kind of thong, and even that's just for show. Don and Ed arrived. I briefed them on how the women looked. A few minutes later, a couple of guys approached and entered the bar. We couldn't be sure they were Eric and Richard, but we all had the same idea: don't spoil the show just yet. Ed decided to check it out first. He wore a baseball cap, hoping to stay unrecognizable for now. A few moments later, Ed called out, reporting he had spotted the two guys sitting with Angela and Emma. They were smooching, all over each other, like there was no one else in the world. He relayed their location, then quickly headed back out to help Don identify their cars, just in case we needed a backup plan. When everything was ready, Jason and I pulled out our phones, turned on the cameras, and entered the bar. Without a word, we walked straight towards them, recording their every affectionate gesture, intertwined hands, passionate looks. Emma looked up and almost shrieked when she recognized us. "Hello, you whores," I said, sneering, my voice louder than usual so everyone could hear. Angela's face went pale. She stammered, unable to speak. "Keep on going, bitch," I said, pressing the point, not letting up. The bar went silent, the air thick with tension. "Don't mind me and don't bother packing up to go home. I'll pack your stuff tonight and throw it out on the lawn. You can just drag it over to Emma's." Then I turned to the two guys. "You guys are welcome to keep these married women after tonight. I don't need them anymore." One of the guys looked like he wanted to argue, but I lifted my shirt, revealing the Glock's grip in my waistband. Even in the dim light, I could see his face go white. Jason and I walked out without a word. I wondered how long it would take before I got the first call from Angela. Sure enough, 10 minutes later, my phone rang. "Yeah?" I answered with a sarcastic tone. "Did your boy Toy play with her one and done?" I put it on speaker so Jason could enjoy the show. "Damn it, Jerry," Angela said, her breath catching. "It's not what you think. They're just old friends of Emma's. They're in town on business, and she just asked me to go along to keep her company." I stifled a laugh, but couldn't hide the sarcasm. "Really? So one of his hands is around your shoulder, the other's somewhere under the table, just friendly?" I said. "But it doesn't really matter now, Angela. You lied, you cheated, and that's the end of us." Just then I heard her trying to plead. "Jerry, please," but I simply ended the call. Jason turned to me, winking. "Hey, you're coming home with me tonight." I was a little surprised and raised an eyebrow. But he shrugged, not giving me a chance to refuse. "Don't argue. You've had a rough couple of hours. You need someone around so you don't do something stupid in a fit of anger." I nodded gratefully, forcing a slight smile. Jason handed me his phone. "Call Sue." As soon as Sue picked up, her voice was laced with fury. "What in the hell is going on with her?" I put it on speaker so Jason could hear. "She's cheating, right? Throw the bitch's stuff on the lawn and lock the door." I couldn't help but laugh out loud. "Thanks, Sue," I said. "I really appreciate you having my back." Sue didn't hesitate. "If Jason cheats, I'll deal with him the same way. If I cheat on him, I don't expect anything less than the same response, or worse. Jason, stay with Jerry tonight. Help him through this. You guys can plan a couple of days out, go fishing, or whatever helps him calm down," she said decisively. "I gotta say, I love my sister-in-law." Jason turned to me. "Okay, now the important question is, what are we drinking? Whiskey, tequila, rum, or beer?" I chuckled. Let's start with beer. He nodded, grabbed 2 beers from the fridge, and added a few more to the stash. Now, should we start packing up her stuff? Jason asked, a smirk playing on his lips, a hint of excitement in his voice. I knew I might not win the battle for the house, but tonight was my chance to make a statement. We grabbed a large garbage bag and started throwing Angela's belongings in, starting with her clothes. Before long, we had a pile of bags by the front walkway. Where we live, people have a habit of putting unwanted stuff on the curb. Whoever needs it takes it. I carefully placed Angela's bags by the side of the house, not on the curb, in case someone decided to steal them. Now, everything was neatly in black bags, waiting for her to collect. Before we finished, I checked for the valuables in the house, changed the code for the gun safe, and made sure important documents were locked away. I knew if Angela went ballistic, she might destroy or take anything. But from this moment, I didn't care anymore. It was all over. She pulled up to the house, Emma right next to her. Angela jumped out of the car, angry. "You're actually going to throw my stuff out," she screamed. I just nodded, my eyes unwavering. It was only 9 o'clock, and our story was just beginning, building towards a climax. I grabbed the air horn from my fishing and boating kit and gave it a good blast. The horn blared through the neighborhood, getting everyone's attention. Neighbors started appearing at their doors, some stepping out into their yards, phones in hand, ready to capture everything. I knew they wouldn't miss this spectacle. I stepped out to the curb, my voice loud and clear. My wife Angela and her friend, Emma, have been out on a wild bender with strange men at a bar. I caught them red-handed. Behind me, Angela's voice wailed in despair as I continued. "If anyone wants to see the proof, I'm happy to share the video. She can get the hell out of my house and stay with her best friend." I finished and waved goodbye, as if I was seeing her off at a grand send-off. Angela looked at me, tears in her eyes, her voice choked. "How could you?" She couldn't believe I was making this public. Emma just collapsed onto the grass, her face pale, knowing the full implications of what was happening. If I didn't do it to her husband, it was just a matter of time before I did. She knew this, and that's why she was shaking. Emma's husband, Bob, had only been married to her for a couple of years, but I'd warned him from the beginning to be careful. Trust, but verify, I told him. Bob had listened and signed a prenuptial agreement. Knowing Emma, I knew it was the only way Bob could protect himself if things went south. Emma tried to regain her composure, her voice defiant but still shaky. "You're a jerk. You don't have any proof that we did anything. We were just sitting in a bar with some friends." Big deal. She tried to act like nothing was important. I pointed to Angela's bags neatly packed by the walkway. "You two better move these quickly before they get stolen," I said, without hesitation. On the sly, I hoped the cops would show up, just to add more drama to the night. And sure enough, a police cruiser pulled up in front of the house. While Jason was in the office making sure everything on our phones was uploaded to the cloud, I was busy explaining the situation to the cops, how I had caught my wife cheating. The question now was, who was going to be the one leaving the house tonight? One officer looked at me, saying, "Usually it's the man." I shrugged. "I'm happy to leave, but her stuff is already packed." The officer laughed, knowing I was purposely recording everything with his camera. "But I need to protect my property in the house. This is where I keep important, sensitive work materials. I can't have her destroying things." Then, a sergeant was called in to handle the situation. He listened to my explanation, and then, with a smirk almost breaking through, he turned to Angela. "Do you have a place to stay tonight? And to ensure your belongings are safe overnight?" Angela just nodded, tears streaming down her face, speechless. When the cop asked if I wanted to help Angela get these bags over to Emma's, I laughed and nodded. Half the neighborhood had gathered, watching intently. A few neighbors came over to help, not missing the chance to get the full story. Angela turned back, trying one last time, her voice full of despair. "Please, can we talk?" I gave a faint smile, making sure my voice was loud. "Maybe, but not now. Wait a couple of days until I'm sure your boyfriend is out of your life completely. And remember, you had a full hour after I left the bar to do whatever you wanted. Don't blame me now." With that, I watched Angela and Emma leave, tears streaming down their faces. A few of our neighbors chuckled, whispering to each other. My words would definitely become the neighborhood story that no one would forget. While Angela and Emma thought they had gotten away with it, Eric and Richard thought they had escaped without any trouble. But no, Ed and Don kept a discreet distance from them. They noticed when the two men followed me and Jason out of the bar, and then left after us. At a safe distance, Eric and Richard turned back to say quick goodbyes to Angela and Emma with hasty kisses. We made sure we didn't miss that scene. Ed and Don got full video, capturing license plate numbers, make, and model of each man's car. Then, Ed and Don followed them home, keeping a safe distance. Ed called Jason to give him the update, and Jason told them to come straight over to my house to share the story. We sat down with our beers, laughing and sharing the story, but Ed wouldn't take his eyes off me, worry etched on his face. Finally, I raised an eyebrow. "What's wrong?" Ed chuckled. "Man, you're about to go off the deep end. I'm staying here to make sure you don't do anything drastic." Jason nodded. "Trust me, anger can make you lose control." "What the hell are you guys talking about?" I asked, starting to get really annoyed. Don sat beside me, patting my shoulder sympathetically. "I've been in your shoes right here, right now." I sat in the dark, crying about my marriage, feeling sorry for myself. But after a while I was just angry. Angry that I was so stupid, and angry for being betrayed so completely. He chuckled. I really wanted to hurt her, and that jerk. I could feel the anger in his voice, so I asked, "What did you do?" Don smirked. "Officially, I just got a divorce," and I let his wife know. But Ed couldn't help but laugh. He chuckled and looked at Don. "Okay, that's the official part. Jerry needs to hear the rest." Don grinned, nodding in agreement, and Ed continued. "We had a little operation against the guy. He knew Crystal was married, and still went for it. And none of us ever mentioned her by her real name. We called her the cheating whore." Ed winked. Don took over. Within a day, the guy got a pretty good beating. Nothing too serious, but definitely needed some ice on his special place. His bad luck story goes on for a while. His backyard shed got mysteriously burnt down, his tires kept getting flat, and even when he went to a bar, someone punched him in the face. He kept having bad luck that he couldn't explain. His boss knew, but wouldn't fire him, just put him on probation. When he tried to find a new job, the story followed him. Who wants to hire a guy like that? I couldn't help but ask, "What happened then?" Don laughed. "Oh, he moved to Georgia, trying to start over. But after a month, his new boss figured out why he had to leave Louisiana. Seems like they didn't like guys like him any more than we did." I was shocked. "You guys actually went after him like that?" I'd never heard the story before, and their thoroughness blew my mind. Don shrugged. "Hey, everyone needs a little hobby in life. Mine, besides fishing and hunting, is pretty much this stuff when I'm not busy with work. Unless there's a good movie on." Ed chuckled. "Oh, Jerry, you should hear the rest of Crystal's story." Don nodded. "After that, she had a hard time finding decent relationships. Guys might like a little spice, but everyone freaks out when they see a video of her having fun with multiple dudes at the same time. All 3 holes." Don shrugged. "She thought she was a star, but no one would bring her home to meet their parents. And all her coworkers had copies of the video, especially the wives of the male coworkers. Needless to say, they were not happy." I laughed so hard I almost cried. Now I see I was being too hasty. I should have thought about revenge like you guys. Don shrugged. "It's fun, but it gets tiring chasing after it. She's always wondering who's behind whatever happens to her though. She came to me once, asking if there was any way I could make it stop. I just looked at her calmly and said I had nothing to do with it." Everyone laughed. I felt a little lighter, but couldn't help but wonder if I should do more. Ed put a hand on my shoulder. "Hey, think before you act. Tonight was just the beginning." Jason relayed Sue's suggestion about spending a few days at the family fishing camp, drinking and relaxing. Technically, the camp belonged to our dad, but Jason and I could use it whenever. Ed perked up. "Oh man, that's a great idea." He laughed. "I'm sure my wife would be okay with that too, as long as I bring back a ton of fish for her." Don chimed in. "Yeah, and it'll keep her from meeting up with her big dick boyfriend while you're gone." The whole group erupted in laughter. Ed smirked back. "Not a chance, unless she wants a divorce first. My prenup isn't that forgiving." I shrugged and sighed. I regret not protecting myself from the start. Angela's 2 best friends were always out there, living it up. I should have been more wary. The 3 of them looked at me, offering condolences and reminding me that everyone makes mistakes. "Next time will be different," they said. Eventually, we got some rest. I laid there for a while, wondering if I could sleep after everything that happened. But talking to my friends really helped to lighten the mood. I felt much more relaxed and quickly drifted off. The next morning, I woke up without feeling any of that tightness in my chest. The next day, Angela contacted me, wanting to talk. "Why do we need to talk?" I asked, trying to keep my voice cold. She showed up at my house mid-morning. I told her we could only talk in the front yard. No way was she coming inside. My phone was on record in my pocket. She tried to apologize, saying that me showing up at the bar last night stopped her from doing something stupid. I looked at her, incredulous. "How many times before did you have fun with them, or their friends, Angela?" I asked, nonchalant. She froze, realizing I knew more than she thought. I narrowed my eyes and smiled. "I have good news and bad news for you. Good news is, I paid off our credit card debt and the utility bills for next month. I even paid off the larger loans. Bad news is we only have about $700 between our checking and savings. Half that is mine, which I withdrew." She looked at me, horrified, her mouth agape. I shrugged, casual as could be. "So you still have options. You can move in with Emma or your buddy boyfriend. I'm selling this house ASAP. Monday I'll call a realtor, and before that, an attorney." She looked at me, tears in her eyes. "Can't we talk about this a little?" "What's there to talk about?" I tried to sound strong, even though my heart felt like it was being ripped apart. "You're the one who chose to betray me. You probably thought you knew what would happen if I found out. But you never thought I would actually do this, did you?" I chuckled. "At least you still have options. Your buddy will probably take care of you. It might get a little complicated if one of them is already married, though." Angela looked up, her face white. "They have wives and kids. You can't destroy their lives." I laughed, trying to keep my tone calm. "Oh, really? Did they think about their families or my marriage? So why should I care? Let those hypocrites' masks fall off. Everyone will know." I crossed my arms. "If you don't have anything new to say, you better head over to Emma's." She looked at me in desperation, then turned to leave, but turned back and asked, "Did you tell Bob?" It was clearly what was worrying Emma the most. I nodded. Of course, I had called Bob last night before the booze had a chance to really kick in. I told him the whole story and reminded him to do what he needed to protect his assets. Bob wasn't deep in debt, but he followed through, paid off his debts, canceled his credit cards, and withdrew 75% of the cash from their joint account, as per their prenuptial agreement. I knew, just like Bob, that Emma wouldn't be able to get any of it back once she'd moved on. I watched Angela walk away, her posture slumped, shoulders drooping, steps heavy. But in my heart, I knew these women would bounce back. They were beautiful, knew how to attract men, and if they needed to, could easily find attention. I almost wanted to point out that they'd probably be more successful if they chose to go professional instead of being cheaters. Yeah, I'd have to save that for another day. Thinking about what Don said the night before, I smiled bitterly. Everyone needs a hobby. His was punishing cheaters. I needed to find a similar hobby. I didn't have enough info about those guys, but I did know Angela's weak spot. Maybe it was a little cruel, but I needed to give her a taste of her own medicine. I pulled out my phone, a cold smile creeping onto my face. "Hello, Ms. Sullivan," I said to the woman who answered. "Since when do you call me Ms. Sullivan?" she asked. "Not since you started dating Angela. I've always been Mom." "Well, that's the issue," I said. "I love you. You've always been there for me, but things have changed. I wanted you to know that Angela and I are getting a divorce." To say the woman, almost 50, was shocked was an understatement. "What?" she shrieked. "Last week you told me you guys were deciding to have kids." "Oh, that was before I found out Angela had been cheating on me," I said. "She and her friends Emma and Tammy have been hooking up with these 3 guys whenever they could. From what I heard, it was a non-stop orgy with no holes off limits. Angela would go there whenever I was at my fishing camp. She'd beg not to go with me and instead, she'd go have fun with one of these guys." Ms. Sullivan asked if I was sure. "I have recordings of it and I followed her to a bar last night. Her behavior at the bar would have failed the test for most husbands. Actually, her behavior would be banned from most bars in town," I said. "I have video." "That stupid bitch," Ms. Sullivan muttered. "I thought she was over that stuff after marrying you." She said she was. She started to cry. "Please stay nearby, Jerry. I have to go." She hung up the phone. I felt bad for hurting the sweet lady, but I didn't want Angela to spin the story to her family and make me look bad. 30 minutes later, I got an angry call from Angela. "How dare you, you son of a bitch," she screamed. "What?" I asked innocently. You know, how could you tell my mother I'm a slut? She yelled. Is it true? I asked. She called me a few more names and hung up. Bob had arrived. He didn't even stop at his own house. He wanted to talk to me first. After we talked and he had copies of both the audio file and the video of Emma making out with a guy who had a hand in an inappropriate place, we walked down to his house. I'm here to get my things, or at least enough clothes for a few days, he announced. Emma looked back and forth between Bob and me. He pulled out his cell phone. If anything is damaged, destroyed, or interfered with, I'll file criminal charges against you. Consider this notice, he warned. He walked around the house, recording video. I hadn't thought about that. I pulled out my cell phone. Angela, I'm going back to the house and recording video of where we live. If anything is destroyed or stolen, I'll file criminal charges against you. And that includes letting one of your boyfriends into the house and them causing any damage. I didn't know if it was legal, but it sounded good. Angela just sat there and sobbed. I doubt she would think about destroying anything herself, but I didn't want to take any chances. 24 hours ago, I never would have dreamed she would cheat on me. Bob grabbed enough clothes for a few days and we carried them back to my house. You know, I really thought Emma had changed her ways. She told me several times that she used to be a slut. Her description was pretty wild, but that was all in the past. She wanted to be a loving wife and mother of my children. I feel so stupid. She even stopped taking birth control a few months ago. Oh my God. I hope she's not pregnant. I'll get a DNA test, of course, but even if I am the father, I'll still have to pay child support. I told him not to worry until it happened. Don, Ed, and Jason brought over a few cases of beer. So everything is cured by beer, huh? I joked. No, it just makes everything a little easier, Don replied. I told them about what I did with Angela. Don laughed and congratulated me. Bob did the same for me, covering his own ass. He owed less money, but it was now cleared, and he had moved his share to a different account. Jason laughed, saying he could go on a long trip and spend weeks in Cabo with all the money now sitting in his checking account. Bob and I needed an account to put money in. I didn't have much, but he did. We couldn't open an account last night, so we moved our money into Jason's account. My brother ran the plates. Of course he can't say anything officially, but I have names and addresses, Don reported. I told them Angela said those guys were married and had kids. Okay, before I get too drunk, I want to see what I can find out about the wives, I said. Bob, I'm going to burn the earth a little bit, for revenge. What about you? He grinned and pulled out his laptop. Finding Eric and Richard was easier than I thought. They both had Facebook profiles, complete with pictures of their wives and kids. Their wives were listed in their contacts. Getting the cell phone numbers for each woman was simple. Each man had a couple of contacts named Brian and a few that were shared. We didn't want to give a heads up to an innocent man's wife. I called and introduced myself to Richard's wife. I didn't beat around the bush. I explained the entire situation. As soon as she heard everything, she was furious, her voice shaking. Apparently, this wasn't the first time Richard had betrayed her. She had trusted him to go out with his two best friends because she thought it would keep him from straying. I smirked. Let me guess, Brian was one of those best friends but didn't go with them last night. Do you know his wife? She confirmed it, and I asked if she'd want to meet so I could hand-deliver copies of the recordings and videos I had. She definitely wanted to meet, and as soon as possible. I suggested I call Eric's wife, but she said she would take care of that, and Brian too, and would get back to me. Only 15 minutes later, she called back. I was surprised at her speed, but she said she wasn't going to waste another minute. I then copied all the recordings, prepared for the meeting. Bob came with me, and we sat in the coffee shop waiting. Before long, 3 women walked in, looking calm and determined. They weren't heavily made up, but they were all beautiful. Each had an effortless allure. As they sat down, I offered coffee, and then played the original recordings for them. Lucy, Richard's wife, sipped her coffee, frowning slightly. So this has been going on for a while. I explained that I wasn't sure exactly how this whole thing started or how these men met our wives. They had never met Angela or Emma before. I pulled up the phone, showing them a picture of Tammy. Brian's wife immediately recognized her. She works at the same company as Brian. I think her name is Tamara something. Maybe that's how it started. She and Brian were cheating. Then the group moved on to more depraved fun. I corrected her. Not exactly an orgy, actually. They just swapped partners for a night. All boundaries seem to have been erased. It's like they're adapting to everything. Eric's wife furrowed her brow, shaking her head. Yeah, I wasn't surprised when Eric described going for the ass on his wife. To be honest, I tried it with him, but he's always rough. She paused, turning to look at me. I'm sorry, but it sounds like your wife really is into this stuff. I tried to keep my voice calm and assured her that it was shocking to me as well. After reviewing all the evidence, I told them I was filing for divorce soon, and Bob and I were financially prepared. I saw a look of determination flash in Lucy's eyes, and she said, I think I'm going to stop by a few stores on my way home. There's an expensive dress I've had my eye on for a while. I'll get it, and then make Richard pay for it when he gets home, before I kick him out. Eric's wife smirked. Eric will definitely know something's up as soon as he sees his stuff on the lawn. I think he'll call Richard as soon as he walks in the driveway. I smiled. I packed Angela's stuff too. I'm happy to help if you need it. The group burst into laughter as someone else commented, I like your idea of the air horn to attract the neighbors. You said you could get them at the fishing section of the supermarket, right? I nodded and Bob and I couldn't help but laugh. Someone suggested, we should coordinate a little bit. I'm guessing they'll be home around 6 after their golf game. Who knows how many other off-schedule golf games they had for their putting sessions with those ladies. Everyone laughed. The feeling of hurt and sadness had completely vanished, replaced by a righteous anger. Lucy became serious. Actually, the girls and I already had this agreement. After I caught Richard cheating the first time, we made them sign a post-nuptial agreement, just in case this happened again. Now, we're going to go full force with it. We also discussed how to handle the situation if one of our husbands cheated, so we'd all have a common strategy. Now, knowing they are all involved, we aren't letting any of them off the hook. Our kids are old enough, and they'll know the whole story tonight. The group of women all nodded in agreement. We exchanged numbers, said goodbye, and prepared for the next steps. On the way home, Bob turned to me, shaking his head. Those 3 guys thought they could keep everything under wraps by sharing the secret with each other. God, I'm glad your car needed repairs yesterday. Otherwise, I might still be in the dark. I got back home, my mood heavy. The house, once filled with dreams, was now a symbol of betrayal. We spent the rest of the afternoon drinking beer, the bitterness in our minds being washed away by the bitterness of cold beer. None of us were sober enough to drive, so we ordered food delivery. The phone rang. It was Emma calling Bob. He put it on speakerphone. Why do you have to involve Tammy and Brian? They weren't even there last night. She whined, her voice full of frustration. All 3 of their wives are threatening divorce, and Brian's wife said she's going to report him to his boss. Tammy called all of us, freaking out because she might lose her job too. I couldn't help it. I started chuckling, my laugh cold and unsympathetic. Let me ask you something, Bob said, his voice calm but laced with venom. We're guessing you 2 used to meet up at Tammy's place to have your little threesome fun. The studio apartment must have been pretty expensive and cramped for space. Emma stammered, neither confirming nor denying. Whatever, Tammy was in on it from the beginning. Too bad for her. She deserves it, Bob said, his voice as cold as ice. The events over the next week played out just like we expected. Bob and I hired the same lawyer, a gruff old man with a potty mouth, but he was good at what he did. We used the same lawyer who drew up Bob's prenuptial agreement. Angela and Emma were served at work midweek. Both houses were listed for sale. We listed the houses with the same realtor. We explained the situation and said that although we knew we didn't have much equity, we'd work with the sale so that we wouldn't incur a lot of out-of-pocket expenses. I've always heard that any endeavor is 90% preparation and 10% execution. Divorce is the same way. Once we started everything, our part was pretty much done. The lawyers would take it from here. I found a small apartment where I could start over. Dividing the actual stuff and other shared assets was easy. Most of the things were put into separate storage units, and we hired an estate sale company to sell the rest for cash. The only place I almost screwed up was in the courtroom. I started to comment on how good the girls were at lying when they became professionals. If not a working girl, then an online escort. The kick my lawyer gave me under the table made my shin cramp up. You idiot, she said, frowning at first, but then breaking into a smile. There are some things you just cannot say in court. Angela's attorney has mentioned you told all her co-workers, friends, and family about her indiscretions. You do not want to couple that with a comment about her engaging in prostitution to support herself. It might be a little over the top, but we do not want you charged with attempting to force your ex-wife into prostitution by your actions. That could be bad, and you could find yourself paying her alimony. Just keep your comments to yourself." I nodded, my mind filled with anger and bitterness. Emma, Angela, and Tammy ended up being roommates after 7 years. Tammy couldn't afford the rent after losing her job. It seemed her new boss heard something about her and her wild roommates. All of Angela's co-workers knew what she did to destroy her marriage. Her job seemed to be on hold, but I bet the men were lining up to sleep with her, with their wives' eyes watching. Emma's job at the mall wasn't going to keep a roof over her head without a little help from the others. Bob and I kept tabs on the girls for about a year after the divorce. We took a page from Dawn's book of hobbies and let any guy who dated one of them for more than 2 dates know all about them. Finally, we got bored with that effort. Brian got fired from his job at the same time as Tammy. I heard he had a couple of good job prospects. He definitely needed a job. His child support and alimony payments were set up in a post-nuptial agreement. Although I felt sorry for his family, his new boss and co-workers quickly figured out the details of why he lost his previous position. He wasn't a happy camper when he was treated like a pariah. Richard and Eric weren't doing much better, even though they kept their jobs. I never heard whether they ever went to Tammy's for sex, but I wouldn't be surprised. Since it all went down, Bob and I have both been happily and peacefully enjoying our single lives. At 29, I don't see the need to rush into marriage again. Instead, I'm focusing on myself, meeting some new people, and honestly, having a few promising relationships. One person who caught my eye was the sister of one of Jason's coworkers. I met her at a barbecue at Jason's house. It seemed Jason and Sue had orchestrated the meeting, and I wasn't complaining. We've gone out a few times, and things seem to be clicking naturally. She's a fun, interesting person, perfect for both my outdoor camping trips and my private moments. She's slowly becoming the person I want to spend most of my free time with. I have to admit that since I've been with her, I've toned down my enthusiasm for my campaign of retribution against that group of cheaters. We've even talked, hypothetically, about a prenuptial agreement if things get serious. Although she agrees, I get the feeling she doesn't really think it's necessary. One afternoon at the fishing camp, as we were sitting on the banks of a swamp, she laughed and said, half jokingly, "If my husband ever cheats on me, he'll be gator bait after I turn his balls into fishing lures." This little Cajun girl is a real firecracker, and to be honest, I like that.